Welcome back, Morbid Moss. Thank you for joining us on Moss to the Flame. Today we have Lydia V. Russell tuning in all the way from the great UK to share her latest novel with us. I'm so excited to talk about The Quiet Stillness of Empty Houses, which has been described as a love letter to Gothic novels of the past. Welcome, Miss Lydia. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
We are excited to have you. So, Miss Lydia grew up in a haunted cottage deep in the Dorset countryside, along her three elder brothers, using the fields and woodland as their playground. As an adult with two young children, she has used the memories of the wild woods of her youth to write stories about fairies and ghosts and the old whispering oaks. When she is not writing, she is most likely to be found exploring the woods near her home or curled up by candlelight with a good book. Now that sounds like a fun life experience that you have had. That is awesome. So first of all, tell us just a little bit about yourself. What is your background as a writer? Have you always been a writer? Is this a new thing? Tell us about that.
Okay, yeah, I've always wanted to be a writer since I was very young. All my teachers, my English teachers, even my drama teachers were like, she's going to be a writer. And I kind of played around with a few bits, some old fantasy stories, some really bad emo poetry when I was about 18 that nobody is ever going to read.
We all have those, right? That makes it fun.
Taken away. And, it was probably about 10 years ago I started to write my fantasy romance novel. It did take about 10 years in between. I moved house, I had children, and everything kind of got put aside while I focused on family and jobs and just different lifestyle. And then as the children got older, I found in between naps, I had time to jot something down really, really quickly. And I was so new to the publishing world. I had no idea what I was doing. But I heard things about like Amazon KDP can do unlimited. And I was just like, oh, that sounds something that I can just kind of piddle into without having
dip your toes in. Yeah.
Like it's all on me. I could do it nice and quietly. So I released my first book, Darling, There Are Wolves in the Woods, which is the fantasy romance. And I had no following. I had no social media. And I just kind of popped it on and went, oh.
Here it is, out into the world.
And nobody's going to read it because nobody knew who I was.
Right.
So I built up then some following. I wrote the second book. I went back and re-edited the first book. And yeah, just since then, I have just not stopped writing. And it's been
that's wonderful. And I love how you mentioned that you went back and edited your first book, because don't they always say our first book teaches us how to be a writer, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And then you go back and you're like, what is that? What did I write?
And I was so privileged that I could go back and kind of just yoink it back a little bit and go, we're just gonna edit that a little more. And it's now something that I'm proud to be out there. Changed the cover, had the formatting redone, learned a lot.
Oh, that's awesome. But it's also, that's good. It was a part of your experience. And we all go through that, the query trenches and the, you gotta grow, stand on your 2 feet as a writer for sure. Yeah, and building.
Definitely. And I think having those little, not failings, that's not the right, like little stumbles. I think you need that to grow as an author.
Absolutely.
You've got to be bloodied and bruised by the end of it if you're not doing it right.
No, I absolutely agree. And it just we call them experiences, right? Each stepping stone until we get to the patio where we're going. So
absolutely, definitely.
Yeah. So The Quiet Stillness of Empty Houses is your latest book. Could you kind of give us a brief overview of the story and what inspired you to write it?
Okay. So I had just finished writing the third book of my fantasy novel, and I was going to give myself a break. I put down the laptop, I put down the notebooks. I'm like, we're going to breathe. And it was kind of early autumn and it was raining, and you know the mood. The candles
Oh
are
yeah,
lit.
spooky vibes.
And I was
Yes.
just kind of, in the title, kind of, I was like, ooh, it's really quiet here. And the title came to me first. And it was just this idea of these crumbling mansions that kind of spoke to Theodora Corvus, who is our hero. And then I was like, oh, what happens if she goes to one that suddenly doesn't speak to her and is quiet? And so I just like started jotting down some ideas, and it was all vibes. Went on my Pinterest board, had the soundtrack, and I was just like, I'm just writing notes. I'm not writing a story.
Uh-huh. Yeah. No, I'm not writing. I'm not writing. We're always writing in our
We're
brain.
always I had the title, and then before I knew it, I had the first paragraph, and it's Death was no stranger to Theodora Corvus. And that was it. I was just like, well, she's in my head. She's demanding her stories being told. And that was it. And it was the first novel that I actually plotted out. And it needed to be plotted out because
Mm-hmm.
of obviously what happens. It all
Right.
needs to fit and make sense. I can't just let them wander the corridors and jot notes after them. So I had it plotted. So I knew exactly where everything needed to go. So I'm normally a pantster, so plotting was completely new to me. And before I knew it, within 3 months, I had a rough draft. Wow, that was quick.
That's
And
awesome.
then,
Isn't it funny how plotting, I feel like it changes the game. For me anyway, I'm a major plotter. I have to have every scene
yeah,
going, but then you when you sit down to write, it's not as intimidating because you're like, "Oh, I have this one scene. I can write the scene." And
yeah,
then you're like, "Oh, maybe I'll write two scenes," you
yeah.
know?
I am definitely a convert. Yeah, I've been a pantster. Or the other books all kind of see the pants, knew kind of vaguely where we needed to end up, but kind of like, be free, people. I'm just going to write it.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're quite stillness. There was definitely, and it was just, it flowed so much better. I knew exactly where we needed to go, with still being able to give the characters room to get to the certain places I needed them to be, but in their own way. And they grew much more organically. I didn't get writer's block. I was able to just kind of get this draft out. And then I went back, did a bit of editing, um, kind of contacted my alpha readers. I've got a really lovely critique partner, Chesney Infolt, and she had it and
Yes, I
she went,
saw her in the acknowledgements. Yeah.
yes, oh, I couldn't be here without her. She's been fantastic, and we read each other's like rough draft, but nobody else. So, and we've got to that point in our like friendship where we're like, no, no, you're better than this. Scrub that. Come
That's what you
on.
need. You need people in your life that do that. I'm going to
Yeah.
give a little shout out to Lisa Amowitz, a
Um,
fellow author. And I tell you what, she's like my book slasher. She goes
yeah.
in and she's like, I love her comments. She's from New York. And so she's very, teaches in the Bronx and is very straight to it. She's
Yeah.
like, no, don't do this. Sounds horrible. This is clunky. And I'm
Yeah.
like, you just rip it up, honey.
Yeah. And
I love it.
it's those comments, and because the next one, it's like, this is gold, this is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that kind of, you've got that balance, and it's lovely. Yeah, so I had my alpha readers read it, and they were like, oh, I think you might have something a bit special here. And I was just like,
Yeah.
and another one of my good friends, he read it and he was like, I think you should sub this. And I was just like, no, that's absolutely. I shot him down completely. I was like, absolutely not. Don't be ridiculous. Can't do it. And then Quill and Crow, there was their Twitter hashtag, and it was Pit Dark. So
Yes.
you post your aesthetic boards with like a comp title, a little bit about the book, and hashtag Pit Dark. So I thought, let's just do it, because I can tick it off the box as something that I was too scared to do, and I did it. So I did an aesthetic board, and I love an aesthetic board. So
Oh,
that was
same. So vibes, all the vibes.
I just, it's no words, just vibes. And
Yes, always. That's how all my books start that way too. I love it.
because especially if you're a visual writer, you need that imagery, and then you can get
Mm-hmm.
going. And the idea was, if a publishing company or agent liked it, then you could sub to them. So Quill and Crow liked it, and I was like, oh, well, now I've got to do the next step. So
Yeah, you gotta actually sum it.
I
Yeah.
got it. So I read all through the guidelines, and I did my query letter. I googled what a query letter was because I'd done no research whatsoever.
Oh my gosh!
It was
Wow.
just not the route I was going to go down. So I was like, this is all brand new information. So
Yeah, so it's overwhelming. It really is.
it
Yeah.
was, and the little voice inside my head was going, quit, just quit now, quit, 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 quit. And I was just like, or I said, what's the worst? The worst that's going to happen is they're saying no, and you
And then you're
self-publish
no
it
better off.
anyway.
Right.
So,
Right.
so I was like, I'm doing this. It was one of my kind of push yourself out there kind of moments. I don't have many.
I'm so glad you did too,
Yeah,
because the book is just dripping in that gothic atmospheric. I mean, it really truly is a love letter to the gothic tales of
thank
old.
you.
And you can tell, I have to tell you, you really can tell that you plotted it because there are so many intricate details that
Yeah,
once you get to the end of the book, you're like, oh my God, oh my God. Like, I'm like, what the heck? Why didn't I realize that? Like, it was such an
thank you,
awesome story. And it is amazing hearing
thank
about the
you.
process of how it came to be, because it seems like it's so naturally spilled out and the story was meant to be told. And I
Yeah,
love that. I think
thank
that's
you.
so great. Yeah. So describe, we kind of talked, we've danced in a little bit. It is
I,
a very gothic novel. We've
it
got the
is.
setting of the crumbling manor.
Mhm.
So discuss that setting of the book and how it contributes to the atmosphere and the overall tone of the narrative for your story.
So I think with Empty Houses, the overall narrative, the theme of it is grief, and
Mhm.
not so much overcoming it. It's kind of embracing it in a way, and kind of not letting it consume you, but allowing it to be part of your life.
Yeah.
And so the crumbling mansion, especially at the beginning, kind of symbolized with Theodora the kind of place she was in. She had a lot of these feelings, a lot of these emotions that she didn't know what was happening, and she felt weighed under. And she's within this family home that she has a connection to, but is unable to save this crumbling, rotting house from around her.
Mm-hmm.
And as she goes through the story, the houses change. So she goes to Kingswood, which, this is no spoilers, um, which is on the outside, it's pristine. So it's all that kind of white, kind of Georgian marble, those,
Inviting.
yes,
Yeah.
light
Falsely inviting because
and
it's awful on
airy,
the inside.
yes.
Yeah.
But inside, like the people within it are crumbling, and they're the ones that are decaying and kind of just bringing everybody in with them, and the rot is spreading. And then she kind of gets to um, Broken Oak, and out of all three houses, it's different because it it doesn't speak to her, and she wants to know there's something secret going on, because she can hear these other houses, the stories that they tell. And then as she goes to Broken Oak, and she's like, well, this is a house full of secrets, and I want to know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
And
intriguing. Absolutely.
it's her journey through the houses, kind of dealing with her own warring of feelings and emotion and grief. Um,
Yeah. I actually think that this is, a psychological thriller. It's kind of psychological thriller, gothic,
yeah,
spooky, but really would be a good book for people that are experiencing grief to read,
yeah,
because I thought your take on kind of living in a parallel existence, not trying to get rid of the grief, but
yeah,
in not also inviting it in, but just learning how to live and continue on with
yeah,
grief and being respectful of other people's grief, and how, even when people are in relationships and maybe they've had a spouse that's passed away or
yeah,
something like that, how you can still be confidently the love of their life at that time, just
yeah,
recognizing that they had love before too,
yeah,
and like that sort of thing. I loved all of those themes of
yeah,
it. Really felt like a healing sort of book.
definitely. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. To write
I
as
thought that
well.
was great. Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, in the development of your characters in
Mhm.
The Quiet Stillness of Empty Houses, were there any characters that you felt particularly connected to, or did you have any characters that were challenging to write?
So I think I I connected with, so Theodora is the kind of person I wish I could have been. And I think I was very,
We're good.
we're
We're good.
good.
I just knocked my soundboard over. We're fine.
So yeah, Theodora is the kind of person that I wanted to be. Kind of growing up, she's a lot more sure of herself, even though she has got doubt. She's got that inner strength to kind of go, right, let's go looking for the answers. And it's something that um growing up that I did lack. And so I did write her from a prospect as kind of, this is who I could have been if given kind of like the stepping stones, perhaps. So
Yeah.
I definitely feel connected to Theodora, because she is that part of me that didn't get to emerge. So I've kind of given that part. So that was definitely a healing part of
Yeah.
writing.
Cathartic.
Um, Cassius, I think, is I've got such a soft spot for him. He was really good fun to write. I think I really wanted to kind of take that notion of the kind of dark, brooding, gothic lord and kind of just tip it on its head a little bit, because yeah, I mean, he is dark and brooding, but I wanted him to be the one that's kind of wailing around the corridors, going, "Oh my
Yes.
goodness!"
Drama. Yeah, the damsel in distress, but yeah, yeah, the lord in distress. And also the different relationships, how you portray, you have that very stereotypical in Kingswood
Yeah,
of the angry lord and the
yeah,
and all that. And then you get over to Broken Oak and they love each other. They're like a family. And
yeah.
it's such a dichotomous experience for the reader. I thought that was just really, really good. I
Thank
loved
you.
that. Yeah. So your book has been described as a psychological thriller.
Mhm.
And can you discuss maybe the challenges, rewards of writing in that genre specifically?
Ooh, I think it's not a genre that I've written in before. So I've done dark fantasy, but this was all brand new for me. So it was a complete challenge to begin with. So I was so careful to kind of, when I was writing it and plotting it, and I was really kind of having to learn a lot more patience and a lot more kind of care, because there are lots of breadcrumbs throughout.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was writing it, I was just like, okay, is this breadcrumbs or am I leaving rocks at this point? Because I'm worried that it was kind of like either too obvious or not enough.
Oh no,
Um,
definitely not. Like I shared with you
yeah,
before we started to record, I usually see plot twists and things coming a mile away, and I knew something was up. But your breadcrumbs were exactly breadcrumbs
thank
because
you.
I was shocked, absolutely destroyed. And when I got to the end of the book, I was like, I did not see that coming, and it was so fun. Like, what a fun reader experience that was. It
That
was. I thought that was great.
that's it's really good to hear, because like I was speaking to you earlier, I am hopeless. I'll watch something and it can be spelled out all over the screen or the page, and I'm like, what? I did not see this coming. I can't. I never win Cluedo, but I just haven't got the foggiest.
Oh, that's fun
But
though,
it
because
was,
then everything's a surprise.
but I'm just so easily pleased. Everybody's like, "Did you?" I'm like, "No, this is brilliant. I have no idea."
I love that. I have to say, I was explaining the book to my husband last night, and I said, okay, it's like a mix between The Secret Garden
Oh,
and The Sound of Music,
mhm.
but with a sprinkling of The Woman in Black and maybe a little bit Crimson Peak.
I love
So
that.
it's like, oh, all of that. I just feel like it just kind of it takes pieces from
Yeah,
all of that and blends it together in this beautiful gothic smoothie that was just so much fun. So I have to ask, did you draw inspiration from any gothic literature, gothic films, that sort of thing? Anything that you're like, ooh, this is the same type of vibe? How are you comping it to people? When you explain it to people, how do you describe it?
So when, like, simply, I say it's Jane Eyre with ghosts.
Okay.
Jane Eyre was a huge inspiration. I love Jane Eyre. Wuthering Heights as well, that kind of misty, angsty kind of, the weather, the moors, the misery. I wanted that.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you mentioned Crimson Peak, which is my favorite film, and just watching that, and I loved I love the aesthetics of it, and I just
Oh,
love
yes.
how the ghosts are terrifying, but they're not good, or they're not evil. It's not like that horror film where the ghosts are necessarily out to hurt you. They want to give
Right.
you a message, but it's a really scary message. And
Yeah, yeah,
um
definitely. And it's scarier for the other party,
yeah,
like they're just trying to communicate their
yeah,
pain, their grief, their
yeah,
trauma,
yeah.
Yeah,
But it's not
absolutely.
and the soundtrack. I wrote the book to the soundtrack to Crimson Peak because it was absolutely perfect. And there's one piece, I can't remember what it's called. It's just like a solo violin. And I remember I was on my own. It was absolutely hammering it down outside. So the setting, I had candlelight. I was really in the moment, and it was one of
Yes.
the rocking chair scene. So I was writing that,
Oh.
and I just had the music playing on in the background, complete silence, and then this violin just suddenly goes like that, and I leapt up. The dog leapt up. The computer went. The children were screaming, and it was just
You were experiencing what you were writing in your
I
novel, or
was,
that
yes,
suspense. Well, and I you can feel that in the writing, and I think too you also, and I like to do this too, where you change sort of the syntax and the sentence, just the
yeah,
structure of the wording, and you'll add shorter pieces of text to
yeah,
really heighten the reader, and you're like, oh, this is
yeah.
stressful. Oh my gosh, there's muddy footprints in the hallway, but nobody's inside, and that I thought that was really neat. So, do you have any advice for writers that are trying to induce that feeling? Obviously, having the right setting and kind of experiencing it yourself. Any other advice? We have a lot of writer listeners, so.
Yeah, so I think just having that, like you said, that the pacing. So you don't want to, those kind of tense times, you don't want to be bogging your story down with beautiful prose, which
Mm-hmm.
I am a fan of. And
Yes.
when it was edited, uh, there was like, we're just going to take this bit of prose and we're going to recycle it here because we need it fast paced here. So you want that kind of, like you said, quite
Mm-hmm.
pacey, scary, and then we can have it slow. So that kind of active, very short, kind of short sentences, but also leading into. So I'll do a couple of short, snappy sentences, and perhaps then like a longer one, a footsteps, blah 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 blah, comma comma comma, end, and short snappy. So you're almost mimicking a
Balancing. And
heartbeat.
yeah, you're like heightening someone and you're just making them unsettled
Yeah.
and uneasy. And yeah,
Um,
which makes for the best type of psychological horror,
yeah.
gothic horror, that sort of thing. I mean, and that's a convention of horror writing anyway. And gothic writing is
Yeah.
having that kind of unease and that dread and the spook
Yeah.
throughout the entire book. So very, very cool. So do you have, you've said Jane Eyre, obviously, but are there other authors' books that you feel like have heavily inspired your writing?
Yes. So I am a massive Holly Black fan. So
Okay.
not the same genre, but I just love her darker take on the fairy tales that she writes. So she's been a huge inspiration from since I've read her books. Oh, long decades ago. I picked up. It was just I was one of those children that loved the fairy tales, but like the real fairy tales. I want, dancing on hot coals. I want mermaids turning into sea foam. Those kind of
Yes.
tales. And
Cinderella's cut the sisters cutting off the toes.
yeah,
Yeah, like the legit fairy tales
that's
that are
what I want.
dark.
And
Right.
when I was kind of looking at my middle gradey books, it was all kind of like, and they live happily ever after. I'm like, but why?
Yeah.
And then I
Yeah.
picked up Holly Black's Tithe, and I was like, these are hungry, awful, horrible fairies. You know, there's no necessarily good and evil. They're just all, and even the humans, you're just all
Yeah.
horrible, grey, kind of, you know, you're selfish. And I'm like, this is what I want. And that's,
Yeah.
yeah, I devoured that. Obviously, again, not the gothic genre, but Jane Eyre, not Jane Eyre, sorry, Jane Austen.
Oh yeah,
So I love,
anything she writes. Yeah.
and just from the romance, and just that the beautiful wording that she writes. The Bronte sisters, hugely draw on. This is the point where I completely forget any other book that I've ever read.
Don't you hate that? You're like, I promise I
I know.
know.
I'm like,
That always happens to me. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love shocking people when they're like, what's your favorite book? Because, you know, horror, all the
yeah.
spooky, all the spooky. And I'm like, Little Women.
Oh,
Because that's one of my favorite. I read it
yeah.
once a year. I love it.
Oh,
Like,
fantastic.
it's, you know, the wording and just that old type of vibe. It's so funny. People will say you were born in the wrong time. And I'm like, well, I can appreciate that time, but I don't think I would have made it back then. Like,
The same.
a little much for them. So how do you handle the balance between, you know, that we talked a little bit about your plotting and allowing the story to evolve? Did you purposely plan for moments where the story had to breathe, where you were like, I know that we need a kind of a break after this, you know, really scary scene or
Yeah.
whatever?
Yeah, I did. And that it comes back to where plotting here was absolutely key. So I could have, right, scary scene, and I knew which scenes needed to be, like the scary scenes, the kind of secret scenes, the you know, the reveal scenes and things.
Yeah,
And then in
yeah.
between, I knew the softer scenes. I knew which ones I wanted. So I just had to put them in place. And it wasn't until I kind of had one of my edits back, and it was like, oh, can we have one more soft scene? And I actually, and that was the greenhouse scene with Cassius.
Oh, fun.
And
Yeah.
and I because I wanted more of the house, because you see the library, the playroom, the dining room, and that, and I was like, it's this big sprawling mansion, and I wanted more. So I was like, oh no, there's definitely room. And I was like, the greenhouse is creeping, you know, held up with vines, greenhouse, but have this really lovely moment within it. So it's this lovely
Mm-hmm.
soft moment surrounded by all this kind of rot, decay, and broken glass. So
Yes.
it's
That's a lot of fun. Were there any scenes in the book that were challenging for you to write?
um yes. um the ending,
Mm.
without spoiling anything, it was imperative that I got that right. And um without, so I don't want to spoil anything. So where it ended, like in the book that you've read, wasn't originally the ending. So when I submitted it, it was like, okay, we have a little more. Um,
Okay, I wanted to ask you about that because I noticed as I got to the climax, you know, and you come
yeah,
to that climax and I was like, well, I still have book to read. Like what's going to happen? You know, I
yeah,
was really fascinated by that. And I really felt like the denouement, the, you know, the continuation of the
yeah.
story. I thought that was so cool. So I think that was a really good editorial decision
I
because it really like wraps it all up nicely, but it was almost different because it felt like it went past the end,
yeah.
but in a good way.
It was kind of, that's what I kind of wanted. I didn't want it to feel like an epilogue, but I wanted it to, like you say, I want, even when I submitted it, I was a bit kind of like, I'm not sure on the ending. I think that's going to need some discussion. And then it was like, actually, and then I was like, oh, and I gave these ideas, and they're like, yes, can you do that? So it wasn't, so nothing was like tapped on quickly. It was all kind of, I always planned to hopefully expand it. So when it was like, oh yes, we would love more, and actually rereading it again and again, and seeing that, I'm like, yes, that ending was so needed, but I wanted to get it right, and it took quite a while to kind of get the right feel, because you're warring with a lot of emotions towards the end. And I
Yeah,
wanted to
but it is
juggle.
it's soothing almost,
Yeah,
like a
thank
nice
you.
piece after the great shock of the
Yes.
twist that took my soul away. Oh, so do you have so far any memorable experiences, heartwarming experiences that you've had with readers that have connected with this book in particular, or books in the past? Any kind of fun experiences that you've had?
Yeah, I've had it's just lovely. Having a lot of people tag me in their posts for Empty Houses, which has been amazing. I've had a few people reach out and send me snippets of the book that have like resonated with them, and they're like, "This we." I'm just like, "Oh,"
That's so
and
great.
just
Yes.
yeah, and um, just people just that I haven't necessarily followed. They haven't been following me, but they've read the book and followed me, and then have reached out. So I try not to read the reviews. I kind of, you're not supposed to, are you? But you always have a bit of a
We all do,
nosy.
though, don't we?
But I'm just like, I want to have a look. Oh, let's go.
Yeah, yeah.
um,
You need your critique people, like people in your group can be like, can you just go check those out for me? Are they okay?
yeah,
Like, yeah.
you never know, do you?
No,
And I
no,
think
yeah.
with my other ones, I think because I did it all kind of on my own back, it felt a bit like, if you don't like it, that's fine. That's fine. No, you're gonna like my book. But with Empty Houses, because I've got this amazing team that have done so much, or Quill and Crow have done, and I'm like, it's all of us. I'm like, the pressure's there this time, and I think I really
Right.
like it. So that's been different, and just yeah, I've had messages, a little bit of just it is just people reaching out and just going, I've read your book and it meant a lot, and just had requests for some signing books and some book plates and things, and
Oh, that's so fun. Just to
yeah,
feel
it's
that
just been
support of the community too. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, no,
That's
it's
awesome.
been brilliant, and it's very
That is wonderful. So, speaking of experiences, the characters in your book we mentioned with ghosts, they have lots of paranormal experiences. Did you draw from any personal experiences with that? Have you ever had any paranormal experiences? Your bio says you grew up in a haunted house. I want to hear about that. So,
yes. So um absolutely believe in all things paranormal. I grew
yes.
up in this tiny little hamlet in the middle of the countryside. There's 4 houses, and at one point we were the only family living there.
Oh,
And
wow.
it set in all this farmland. My dad worked on the farm, and it the field behind us was actually a ancient plague village, and it was stones from the old plague village still there. And there was this
That's amazing.
16th century church, and my mum used to go in evenings, and she would sweep it up, and there was a little collection box in the wall. Take that, pass it on, and we'd come with her because that's what we did. So we skipped over the fields, and we'd go there in the dark, and we'd play hide and seek around the tombstones. And
Oh.
it was like a proper. So you got the spiral staircase up to the tower. So my brothers obviously locked me in there, so that was great.
Oh, yeah, of course.
No, residing trauma from that whatsoever.
None. None. Yeah. Now I see where the locked attic room comes from. And I got you.
And, but the cottage that we grew up in, quintessential. If you can picture like an English thatched cottage, that's where I grew up, and it was haunted by what I believed was between an 11, 12-year-old boy, and we all knew he was there, and I would say more poltergeist than ghost, because we never saw him, but he would move stuff. And I
Oh,
had
gosh.
a wooden marionette puppet at the end of my bed, and if something rattles in the wind, it goes like that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you had somebody pick it up and pull it and drop it, it would make a noise, and you pull it and you drop it. So he would do that. So the puppet would go from there and swing back as if somebody was pulling it and dropping it. and it was right next to my head. And he would do that every so often. And sometimes, like, I shared a room with my sister, but we had bunk beds. So I knew it'd
Okay.
never be her. And every now and again, on my shoulder or my arm, you'd get the pinching. And this is just where I
Mm-hmm.
had that feeling. It was that kind of mischievous little boyness.
Mm-hmm.
And we all kind of, when you know, but nobody wants to
Oh,
say they
yeah.
know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Nobody talks. So the dog used to come everywhere with me. I was like, right, we're going upstairs, dog. And the dog was like, I don't want to be up here.
I get that.
And as I got older, the experience got less and less. So I got a bit braver. And I remember one time, so I don't know what, had a Sega Mega Drive. That's how long ago it was. And they have the
Okay.
cartridge cases, don't they? So I
Yes.
was playing my game, cartridge case was open like a book, and I was playing, and it closed and click shut. And that had been the first kind of experience I had for a long time. So you kind of like, it was almost like, I'm still here, don't forget. Like, it
Mm-hmm.
was nothing threatening, it was terrifying, but yeah, it was just very slowly, as if somebody had just clicked. So I remember just kind of turning off the computer, putting back the joystick and legging it, and that was it. I was
Yeah.
like, I'm going to go back up there. Um,
Oh my
and
gosh.
then I remember there was a time I was walking in the fields, and there was a stile, so I was walking towards a stile, and I noticed there was a person there, and like a middle of nowhere. And as I got closer and closer, I could see that they were in like a bonnet and Victorian kind of dress. So I was kind
Okay.
of like, that was odd. And as I got even closer, you could see right through them, and as you got closer, they weren't there.
Oh my God.
So
Did you experience fear? Were you like
I,
heightened when you saw, or were you just kind of almost calm?
I was more intrigued, because it was just kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
what you doing there? And they were just stood there, and it wasn't threatening. Um, there was a few kind of things up in the woods and things that we did run from, that just couldn't be explained. So we were just like,
Yeah. Unnerving.
I'm out, I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah. Wow. Well, no wonder. I feel like you have drawn off of those personal experiences in your
definitely,
book, because
yeah,
you help the reader experience that too. With
yeah,
I'm kind of seeing some parallels with the marionette doll, and
yeah,
so that's really cool to know that that comes from
yeah,
things that you actually experienced
yeah.
yourself. That's so much fun. So much fun. Okay, so one more question before we get into our lightning round.
Ooh.
So as a fellow gothic horror type of writer, obviously I know the amount of research that has to go into making sure the details of a story like that are correct. So what type of researching did you have to do for this story?
So I did kind of I wanted it to be set kind of. Are you familiar with the author Thomas Hardy?
Familiar with, have not read anything in a
Yeah.
long time. Yeah.
He's a kind of local author, and he based his works around Dorset, where I live, and but all the names he changed, and I loved that because it was set in a real place,
Mm-hmm.
but I could change the name. So what I did is I researched the houses, and so each house is based on a real house close by,
Oh,
and
how cool.
so I've just changed the names. And then so I did some research regarding kind of, so like with the crows, I wanted to kind of draw in kind of, and the magpies and all that, like all of like the kind of myths and kind of superstition behind those. Because they
Yes.
are important, you need to pay attention to those because they're telling you stuff.
Oh, that's
Um,
so cool. I love nuanced things
I
like
love,
that.
yeah,
Little pearls of
just pop
wisdom in
those
there.
in.
Yes. Yes.
But
That's very cool. Well, and so you're telling me that if people go to if they're around your community, they can go on a tour
yeah,
essentially of the
yeah,
quiet stillness of empty houses. They can go see the inspirational places themselves. That's
they
so
can.
cool. I would love to see pictures of those places. You'll have to post them
I'll
on
have to
social
do
media.
one.
Yeah,
So
that would be fun.
Kingswood is actually, if you're in England, it's Kingston Moorwood, and although you can't go into the house itself, they do have open days, but you can go around the grounds. And I've actually been to a ball there. It is beautiful, but they have all the servants' passageways, and I used to work there, and I remember I had to go to the top once to go into the pigeonholes, and that's where the attic from Broken Oak's gone, because it is creepy as
Oh my
up
gosh.
there.
Yeah.
Proper.
Wow.
Yeah. And there's lots
That's
of
amazing.
ghost stories there, and yeah, some of them are pretty gruesome. And I was just like, when
Ooh.
you're just like, oh, I don't want to go up here anymore because I've just heard no.
Yeah, not feeling that. You were feeling the vibes
I was
of
not
like,
feeling the
this is
vibe
not.
for that.
Well, that sounds amazing. So now I know, I put that on my bucket list for when I visit that area eventually. I would love a social media post kind of telling us, so we can do some, I'm one of those
Yeah.
that has to research everything. I just love learning about, the parallels with real history. All of those things. That's awesome. Okay, so are you ready for our lightning round?
Let me just.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Just hydrate. Gotta hydrate. Here we go. Okay. Would you rather spend the night in a cemetery or in Broken Oak?
Ooh, Broken Oak, I think.
Okay. Up for a little adventure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
Oh. Okay. Classic horror novels or contemporary horror novels?
Ooh, contemporary.
Oh,
I think.
interesting.
Yes.
Okay. Supernatural horror or psychological horror?
Ooh, supernatural horror.
I can feel that. Yes, that's cool. Okay. I feel like this one's a tough one. Sorry.
Go on.
Bram Stoker's Dracula or Mary Shelley's Frankenstein?
Oh, Mary Shelley. Got to stick with the ladies. It's got to be Mary Shelley.
Okay. Okay. Good. Edgar Allan Poe or Shirley Jackson?
Oh, come on.
I know that
Oh,
one's impossible.
ouch. Oh,
Hmm.
it's got to be Edgar, just for the Raven. Just for the
I
Raven.
agree. Right, well, one of our founding Gothic.
We wouldn't be here without him.
That's right. That's exactly right. Okay, ghost stories or slasher films?
Ghost stories.
Definitely.
Every time.
Around a campfire. Has to be around a campfire.
Yes.
Okay, so classic universal monsters like Frankenstein, Dracula, that sort of thing, or modern horror icons like Freddy, Jason,
Ooh.
Scream, that sort of thing, the Ghostface.
I think you're traditional. I like a Dracula or a Frankenstein, or yeah, give me the old ones. Give me
Oh
the
yeah, and I especially like reimaginings of the old ones too.
Yeah.
And except for the sparkly, we don't do that, but like we don't do that. But I love a reimagining of those types of things. That's super fun.
I am in. Yeah, give me vampires every day.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
That don't sparkle.
Okay. Right. That's people will say, "Oh, if you had an opportunity to become a vampire, would you?" And people like, "No." I'm like, "Hell yeah, I would!" Like, for sure.
Yes. Just before they even finish. Yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah. Like, I volunteer as tribute. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Gothic horror novels or Gothic horror films?
Okay, so Gothic horror films purely because I love watching horror.
Visual.
I'm such a visual inhaler of media. And also I am a huge wimp. So when I'm watching a horror, I can have the cushion. I can kind of send my husband to make sure, it's separate. When you're reading it, it's almost like, you've got like the what they call the goggle things, the virtual reality. You're kind of
yes.
Sorry, I've had a point.
Yes.
But it feels like you're so immersive, and I really do struggle with some of the scarier books. I mean, they're probably even not that scary, but I remember reading Hex. I can't remember the author, and I got 4 chapters. I can't think who the author is. I got 4 chapters in, and there was this just this witch, and she hadn't done anything, but she's in all the scenes, just in the background, with her lips and her eyes sewn shut, and I could see her every time I opened the book, and I was just like, nah, no. And not only did I have to stop reading the book, I had to give the book away because I couldn't have it in my house. I was like, please, this needs to leave.
You're like, I need to read the spoilers on this one. And for our listeners, I just looked it up because I couldn't remember who the author was either, but man, I love that book. Is Thomas Oldhuvelt? Yes. Excellent witchy book for sure. Yeah. Scary though. And I agree with you, because when we're watching a movie, you have kind of cues. You have the music. I'm always listening to the music, and like, oh, you start getting that scoot, and you're like, oh, this might be a time I need to close my eyes.
Yeah.
You get a little bit of a warning there. So this is a hot take, maybe controversial take, but I'm one of those that I actually like to know spoilers before I go into a horror movie. Same. Because it just helps me with my anxiety, and like, because I want to watch the movie and I want to experience it, but I also I don't know if it makes the situation worse though, because sometimes I'll be like, oh, okay, the mom is about to die. I know is she going to die now? Oh, I don't know. Oh gosh, now maybe it's now. Like, it almost makes it more scary. So I don't know. Maybe that's not the method.
I like it. I love a rewatch.
Yes.
So, Hill House, my favorite series ever. I was so scared at one point I cried.
Yes.
But I loved it. It was, my husband was like, are you enjoying this? And I'm just like, it might not seem it, but I love it.
Well, and your book is like that, where I feel like it is better on the second read through too, because it's great for the shocks of the first read through. But I read through it again yesterday. I literally just sat there for 3 hours and reread it so that I was fresh for this podcast, and I knew it was going to be great for the second read through, because I was like, I picked up all those pearls, and I was like, oh my god, well, how did I miss that? How did I miss that? Like that's so much. It's like a different experience each time you read it, you know. So I think that's a lot of fun. Okay, vampires or werewolves?
Vampires.
Definitely, always vampires, for sure. Yeah. Okay, silent horror films or modern found footage horror films?
Ooh,
very different.
They are. I think modern found footage. I quite like the idea that it's got that. Oh, did it happen? You know, it hasn't happened.
Oh yes,
it could have happened because they found the footage. Does that make sense?
Yes. No, I love those. I was watching, have you seen Hell House LLC?
No.
That movie? No, it's a good found footage. You should watch it. Yeah. I like it. It's a really good, lots of twists and things. Yeah, it's good. I love any kind of found footage, anything. Blair Witch. I mean, I just love all that stuff. Yeah. Okay. So classic haunted house stories, I'm going to assume, or demonic possession stories.
Oh, I love a demonic possession. I do.
I do too. I love that. But those are also the ones that are like really scary, because you're like, well, I don't, you know, like it was. I was raised with my mom saying that brings the devil into the home, and so now I'm like, am I bringing dark shit into my am I bringing that into my house? Like, I don't know.
I've just started recollecting porcelain dolls, and every time one comes in the post, my daughter's like, "Is she haunted?" And I'm like, "I don't think this one is. I can't be sure."
We'll find out if she's slowly, you know, moving herself around or that sort of thing. I had a collection of porcelain dolls growing up, and I just loved them. And now I'm like, it's a little creepy. It is a little creepy. They're fun though. They're fun.
Definitely. Yeah. Okay. Ghost stories.
Definitely. Okay. There's only one answer for this. No, I'm just kidding. Victorian era horror or contemporary horror?
Victorian era horror.
Obviously. That's what there's only one answer. Yeah. Okay. Witches or zombies?
Oh, it depends on the film. It depends on the witch, and it depends on the zombie.
If it's the fast or the slow, if it's a hag witch or like a modern witch, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay.
If they're fast, yeah.
Yeah, we don't do it. Yeah. Okay, Guillermo del Toro, excuse me, or Alfred Hitchcock?
Del Toro.
Okay, definitely. Yeah, I agree. Even though, I mean, they're both good, but Del Toro. Yeah. All right. Classic horror anthologies
Ooh.
or single author horror collections?
Ooh. I think single author collections, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
those are fun.
they are
Those are
fun.
fun. Okay, haunted castle or haunted forest?
Haunted Forest. Yes.
Definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
That's fun. A castle's pretty alluring too.
I, how about a haunted forest surrounding a haunted castle? That's
Absolutely.
yeah.
And then
It's
you have
both.
all of it all together. I love that. I love that. Okay. So, classic horror short stories or modern horror short stories?
Ooh, I think modern horror short stories. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
they've
think
really
so.
come a long way. I feel
They
like they're,
have. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Okay. Cult horror classics or mainstream horror blockbusters?
Ooh, I do love the classic, but the mainstream ones that are coming out are they're just too good.
I know. I think it was maybe last week on the pod, I was talking about Jordan Peele and
Yeah.
everything that he's coming out with. And I'm like, man, he's like really rocking the genre right now with different, and I just super
Yeah,
cool and refreshing to see and love that. So yeah, modern horror is in a renaissance for sure
it
right
really
now.
is.
Definitely. Okay. Lovecraftian cosmic dread
Mm.
or Hitchcockian suspense?
Ooh, I like Lovecraftian. I think that one's just got it. I love that kind of.
The supernatural.
Oh,
It's that like
yeah,
cosmic. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Okay, last one. Neil Gaiman or Clive Barker?
Neil Gaiman.
Okay, well, fantasy. You're a big fantasy
I,
person,
I
so that
am.
yeah.
I've read some Clive Barker, and he's good, but something you can't beat that kind of that fantasy. Just kind of tips it for me. Yeah.
Yeah. American Gods too. Like I'm just there's so good, so good, and Sandman. And I mean I could go on, but anyway.
We could be here
Okay,
for ages.
right.
Oh.
Okay, so let's tell all of our listeners where they can. Number one, where can they buy your book,
Mhm.
and then where can they find you on social media? What platforms are you on, and what are your handles? So first of all, where can they buy your book?
Okay, so you can buy it from the amazing people at Quill and Crow in their Crow shop, and you can buy it, I believe, anywhere books are sold. So I think, yeah, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, your favorite retailer, I believe, is all available there.
Okay,
And you
awesome.
can find me. I'm on Twitter, TikTok, Insta, not so much Facebook. I am on Threads. But I've done one post.
Yes,
I'm not sure about Threads yet. It's a bit too
I'm
new.
loving it.
I do.
I've dove in head
Have
first.
you?
I'm into it. I
I've
love
dipped
it.
half a toe in, and I am LV Russell author on my handles. So
Okay, and it's great to have the consistency all the way across the board. That's
I think
awesome.
I
Good for
have
you.
now. There might be. It's. She says, "Yeah, I'm totally consistent." Actually, I might not be.
Well, your website, what is your website? And that has all the links to your socials on it. So,
That is. So I haven't got the domain name yet. So it's
okay.
Wixsite, and it's Lydia V Russell author at Wixsite.
Perfect.
.com, I believe. Yeah,
Yes.
it's
Okay.
on. It's
And
updated now, but I haven't updated it enough that it's got its own kind of fancy domain.
right,
We're
right.
getting
Well,
there.
and it's a beautiful website too. Yeah, I
Thank
mean
you.
it's stepping stones, right? We talked stepping stones.
Yeah.
Final question. What can we expect from you? What's coming in the world of the LV Russell universe? What's happening?
Well, I am currently, because I promised myself I was going to give myself a break, so naturally I'm writing another book, and it is
I mean, that's how it goes.
just the brain won't stop braining, and
That's right.
it's going to be a dark. It started off as a kind of dark, cozy cottagecore horror. It's not that anymore. I went back, and it is now a dark folk horror. It's very eldritch horror. Watch the Witch. That kind of
Oh,
really old
I
vibe.
die for
Wicker
that.
Man, Midsummer, Blair Witch
Yes.
feel. All coziness has gone. There's no cozy. It's not a cozy story.
Oh,
And it's all
fun. I love folk horror and
female
the
rage
witch.
kind of, yeah.
And
So we
everything
are,
Robert Eggers does. He's my favorite director.
yeah,
I
yeah.
die. I love it. Love it.
Mhm.
Awesome. So we
So
will keep an eye out for that. That's
thank
very
you. Yeah, that's
exciting
what I'm
for
working on.
sure. Okay, so all of our listeners, you need to go follow LV Russell author on all of her social media platforms, and hopefully we will see you again on the pod. Okay.
I would love to come back. Absolutely.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. I
Thank
so
you for
appreciated
having
having
me.
you on today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.